Hi, everybody. We're going to get started with tonight's event. Just hello. Hi. Thank you. We're going to get started with tonight's event. We're so excited. My name is Bex. I am the events coordinator here at Books Are Magic, which if you haven't been here before, we are a small independent bookstore who is here and also in Cobble Hill. And we're so excited to be partnering with the Brooklyn Book Festival to bring you an evening with the Institute of American Indian Arts. Before we get started, just have a few housekeeping notes to go over. After the talk tonight, there will be some book signings, so we will let you know when and where to line up for that. If you would like to purchase Mother or Whiskey Tender at the store, we have it at the register. Purchase it. We have a no books back on the shelf policy, which means you have to buy them. Please and thank you. And if you're with us on live stream, you can also buy at the link in the description. And so tonight, we are so proud to be an official 2024 Brooklyn Book Festival bookend event. Bookend events in person in all 5 boroughs and online, run from September 22nd through the 30th, and are a vital part of the Brooklyn Book Festival's mission to present programming that is hip, smart, diverse, and inclusive for NYC and beyond. We hope you can join us this weekend in downtown Brooklyn, just in Cadman Plaza. The Brooklyn Book Festival Children's Day is on Saturday from 10 to 4, and the Festival Day and Literary Marketplace, which we will also be at, selling the National Book Award long list, which also, of course, includes Mother and Whiskey Tender. Yes. That is happening on Sunday from 10 to 6. You can pick up a festival guide at the register or at brooklynbookfestival.org. For more info, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming an evening with IAIA, starting with Deborah.
Thank you all for being here, whether by live stream or in person. I don't know how many of you have heard about the Institute of American Indian Arts, but I am the director of the MFA program there in Santa Fe. And we, as an institute, have, I think we've really changed the literary landscape through the years. We are the birthplace of contemporary Native art. We graduated Joy Harjo, who is was our poet laureate of the United States for a long time, Layli Long Soldier, Tommy Orange, Therese Mayotte, Jake Skeets. I'm very proud of the work that we are doing there. And I don't know, we're really trying to grow, I just want to kind of get this out, we're really trying to grow our screenwriting genre, because we do poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction, and screenwriting. And I don't know if you all have seen Res Dogs, the television show, but 2 of the television writers, Migazi Pensano and Ryan Redcorn, are graduates of our program. We have Native Hawaiian Bryson Chun, who wrote Moana 2, which will be in theaters soon. And we have Desba, who helped write Dark Winds and was an actress in that. And so if you have friends or family who are interested in screenwriting, please send them our way. We would love to have them. And with that, I'm going to introduce our first reader, who is a graduate of IAIA. Julianne Warren, she, her settler, is a writer and activist with an MFA in creative writing from the Institute of American Indian Arts and a PhD in wildlife ecology from the University of Illinois. She has authored 2 books, a colonialist one and an anti-colonist rejoinder forthcoming. Julianne also has co-authored various creative works which increasingly have been in collaboration with birds, living and dead. Julianne is currently visiting on the faculty of NYU Liberal Studies. She makes her home gratefully in Lower Tanana Dene lands in Fairbanks, Alaska. Please welcome Julianne Warren.
Am I supposed to put a microphone? Is there Thank you, Deborah. It's really an honor, and Lily for inviting us, and Michaela for hanging out. Yeah, how's that? Better? Good. Okay. So this is some pieces spliced from a larger manuscript in progress.
Introducing Echo. I was out for a run on a woodsy path in the pre-dawn chiaroscuro, chiaroscuro boreal, sleek birch and aspen skins, bright in moonlight, spruces dark wide and shaggy, those shades shaped like moose could be, the first stirrings of songbird song in spring, hermit thrush, liquid glossing small-leaved limbs here and unseen, dripping notes to sky-pinked seedbed. Afterward, their tunes continuing to resound through me co-constitute longing, which becomes a companionship of remembering, something I've come to cherish with so many birds dead and dying. This is echoic memory, and not only. That is, someone, and not me, nestling in, has been making of my hearing a home, the absence I know now as a person called Echo. Noticing her presence means I have at least begun healing, regrowing elbows and nails and such, habitually bowed lower cast. Could you read a little more slowly? Yes, habitually bowed. Lowercase I begins feeling her throat stretch into an uppercase letter, both pronounced I, into whom each person is born and passes on from into some round of we. Recognizing Echo helps me hear new things, albeit ironically. I say ironically because the vocal agency of dear Echo, a nymph from an old country, was disabled by a raging god. Thus, censured Echo could only repeat the ends of things others said. Subsequently, spurned by her beloved, her body vaporized. Alerted to Echo's entrained vapidity, I began to recognize my own. Listening to Echo's story, I came curiously to hear the sounds composing her name, that is, the phonemes e, k, o, as an onomatopoeia, reflecting spiraling parts and paces of her tale. This helping me hear my own in multiple scales, and ours are by no means singular happenings. Of woods and deserts, tundras and seas, betrayers of lies, a chorusing of the undeflamed, of wills to be, of escapees raised, incubated in hothouses of totality, unevenly, the sounds of air scraping, feathers, portals, ears. First, a note on the phoneme S. In Sir Francis Bacon's Silva Silvarum, or A Natural History in 10 Centuries, published posthumously in 1627, the Lord, an aphorism 251, reports that S is a letter, a phoneme S, an echo will hardly express. When contained in the body of a shouted word, merely hissing will reflect from the hillside or the wooded house. An old Parisian once told Bacon this was the work of good spirits, in that the echo will not deliver back the spoken word of the devil's name, Satan. Satan. A note on love. If only Father would cry. He is sitting at his desk in the basement after our fight. I descend the stairs and apologize, not for what I said, but how I said it. I hear his eyelids not blink, his lips and hands vibrate. He looks past me, cherry-faced and silent. I rise in sock feet, step behind him, my hands barely rest on his shoulders. Nothing stirs. The next morning, I'm saying goodbye. We are all three standing in their driveway. A light mist, him, me, mother's eyes like mine are puffy. There is a before and an after, a fissure. I draw in a sigh of chilly wind. Father is getting old. My heart builds a kite. I embrace him on the inhale. We are head over shoulder, ear to ear, mouth to ear. I'm about to pull away. I hear, "Come out of her," in Father's voice. The look on my face. Did you just try casting a demon from me? What he means, says Mother, is I love you. Her, me, you. To commit to God is to refuse even to save those one loves if they are on the wrong side of the boundary, says Deborah Bird Rose. To refuse the boundary, one bird loves the wrong, loves wrong. Is to be exposed to the ends of things, the edge, to sex, bent to purity, nether. Begging. Something is wrong. One day a litter of kits is snuggling in a grassy nest below greasy mower clippings. The next day I find a lone baby rabbit hunkered in their bowl of ground, I imagine abandoned. In answer to my begging, Father says I can keep this one. My heart flings open. Now she, I hoped she was she, and Father would confirm this, me cupping her tiny bottom while he gently squeezed. Now she is a whirl of gray satin mashed against the fractured glass of old aquarium. I lift the wire lid of her enclosure, sickening at the touch. I cannot resist the reach to stroke the flank who feels unnaturally cold, rigid, a mittened fist. Fingertips recoil. Too late. The ice, kid's rib, right atrium, marrow. I sob for the rejection of my fostering intention. Barely an inkling then, beyond the mime, a heart, a stone engraved in Hume, that love must mean otherwise than possession. My fostering intention. skipping over k. O is to flow, sounds piano, pianissimo to crescendo, to bellow, blow, back, blow. The poet suggests looking at whatever is, was missing in one's life and begin there, says Layli Long Soldier. There, in Hume. Hand me a stone, hand me a stone, hand a stone, a tone. Hello. In one version of my arrival, there's a family grave. Behind this grave is a mossy spring who flushes me out of iron red dirt near headwaters of East Branch, Delaware River. I kneel mouth down in a time-scented bed. Then, head raised, here, mother, in the kitchen of father's old family farmhouse. Father is standing on the rustic porch. He is shouting at the top of his lungs a signal. I head out the screen door, slamming behind me. I stand beside father and imitate his with my smaller voice. Hello, hello, my house, mine, mine, mine. An excavation for extraction. The metal direction of night or chaotic through cracks, tonguing the crusher earth jaw and of every engine, the repercussing in day horn lick. Another word on woods. The woods outside the window breathe beyond hearing. The autumn trees, silver, spruce green, aspen shuddering gilt overhead, root up both sides of a cleave. The bell of a trumpet flaring from the valley below, a mint underneath. Day and night, the metal tonguing of the jaw crusher engine, the chaotic cracks of ore lick through the earth horn, repercussing in every direction. The vibrations, not absorbed by thrushes, tenors, transitive, and durable chickadees' high-pitched voices arrow into my cranium. I open my teeth, hoping for the grinding clamors to exit in gold-red embers of a long exhalation. Out, the clanging, unclanging, tamped into the eternal shaft of exacting dimensional sameness, into sibilance, into silencing eyes, possessed by we of one who is everyone which is no one, out of this flattening of loss, as disturbingly seductive as winter in interior Alaska, the white, no sunlight, the white, the moonrise, the freeze shattering all, but whispers into shards. And the feeling is the aftermath, the dark meat of Orion, where the moose had lain molded into ice, raven talons scribbling disbelief in the return of dawns and soft fat, until again, hearing glittering wing beats, these of tundra swans, not one forgetting. When the beginning finds you, the ending comes with more than one otherwise. It's my joy to introduce, if I can find her little, where is it? Here it is. Lily Philpott, my dear friend and colleague from IAIA. Born in Santiago, Chile, and raised in New England, Lily Philpott is an indigenous transracial adoptee. She's worked in the nonprofit sector in New York City for close to a decade and is a member of the Starlings Collective, a group supporting BIPOC adoptee writers, and a co-chair of the International Literature Committee at the Brooklyn Book Festival, and she volunteers as the director of programs with Singapore Unbound. She received her MFA in fiction from the Institute of American Indian Arts, and I don't know where the rest of her bio went to, but she currently is the events manager for Catapult Books, and she is a shimmering, wonderful person.
Thank you, Julianne. Julianne and Michaela and I had a picnic in Central Park over the weekend because Julianne and I were very nervous, and Deborah was there in spirit flying into New York. But part of what I think is so magical about IAIA is that I really came out of that, and for the first time in about 5 months, felt excited about revision and able to approach my work with a kind and grateful eye, and that was really inspired by hearing Julianne read and reading to each other. I think that's, yeah, I want to always repeat the refrain. What I mean is I love you and thank you all. I want to read a story. It's the first story in my collection. It's an origin story. My manuscript of short stories is about transracial adoption, so it's about origins. Yeah, this is called Origin Story. At first there was nothing, and then nothing exhaled, and there was the wind. For a long time, the wind tumbled in circles, eating its tails, rubbing its teeth together, and spooking at the squall and weight of its own body. For a long time, it was too afraid to venture from the place where it had taken its first breath, worried that it might lose itself in the encompassing dark. And for a long time, the wind coiled and fretted, testing its throat against the quiet. Later, it could not say where it had found the courage to burst from the world of fog its endless circling, cycling had wrought, but one day it caught a cold draft knit with a spine and sprang forward and away. First, though, before it left the quiet, dark place it had always called home, the wind tied a knot in one of its many tails as a reminder of where it became, and this was the first breeze. And then the wind took its invisible spine and fell into nothing. This was a time before night and day, before bone and blood, lost and found, but the way the wind crashed into and against nothing sparked a beginning, and time let go of a breath it did not know it had been holding, and began. At first they fought, nothing and the wind, tangling in fear and confusion until their edges blurred and they were each other but still alien. They howled together and there was sound, and with sound they laughed and spoke and yelled, and the wind shrieked and there was stone. They watched as time sank its hands into seams of mineral and split the rocks apart, and they fought to press themselves closest to the heat of what was being born, and that was greed, and then there were mountains. When they grew tired of fighting, they made peace, and there was rain and snow. They wanted somewhere to dance, and there was earth, and they were hungry, and there were birds and fish and animals, and then there was death. They sucked the bones of their birthed creatures clean, tasting grief in the sweet marrow they tongued dry. They wept, and there was a sea, vast enough to rival nothing and the wind. They wished to see how far the sea stretched, so the wind rubbed its back against the mountains until there was light, and a sun they raised as high as their arms could reach. They burned beneath its eye, and there was fire, and then there was desert. To salve their burns, they made night and the moon after that, and then they sat together on the mountains and looked out and felt full. They were full and there was love. They lay together from the desert to the ice, and there was blue, and that was the sky. And the sky rose and stretched an exultant hand to touch the earth, and that was Waimapu. But when the sky touched the land and pressed its blue face against the earth, all of the hollows in the world were filled, and nothing disappeared, and the wind was alone. Desperate and lonely, the wind flew through the contours of their world, returning again and again to bite at the tips of the Cordillera, belly through the desert, scream at the sea, and seep into the ice. The wind howled, but its echoes were empty. Its voice circled the world and returned, unchanged, to its throat. And it was terribly lonely, so it took sand and rock, moon and sky, blood and silver, and it made people. And they were the Mapuche, the Tehuelche, the Puelche, the Huilliche, the Kaweshkar, the Yagan, the Selknam, the Diaguita, the Quechua, the Aymara, the Guarani, the Ache, the Chana, the Charrua, the Huarpe, the Minuane, the Yaro, the Guaiteco, and many, 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 many more. Roots that dug into the earth and held it steady. Now that it had people, the wind learned time, and it relearned love, and it became accustomed to living with death. And with time and love, there were ancestors, trusted to guide and watch over the world, swift breezes that the wind folded into itself and kept warm. And the wind realized that nothing was the first ancestor, and it hung a memory of nothing in the night sky. Between the shining chips of white ice, it threw high into the air to become stars. And each time the sun fell and the moon rose, their beginning was remembered. The wind loved its land and its people, and when they were born, it whispered a piece of itself into their bones so that it could draw them high and proud. When there were enough people for there to be graves, the wind and the sea and the earth made space for the deceased to rest, archiving bodies and bones among their most precious objects. Muscle churned into furrows of rock beside raw gems and silver, flesh smoke twined with the proudest clouds, the ones most full of rain, and bones grew heavy with shells and algae and creatures as time and time and time passed. The wind and the sea and the earth loved the people who died above and within and between them, and they kept them safe. The wind blew gently against their skin as they lived and died. The sea carried their canoes on its back, guiding them safely through tangled knots of land and water, and the earth fed them, and it gave them a place to sleep and dance and live. This all happened a long time ago, before every curve and dip of that place had names, but after it was loved. It is happening still, now, in this time of lost and found. The wind is still there, curled into that long, thin place, its eye teeth sunk into the end of the world, holding fast, waiting to welcome its lost people home. It is my honor to introduce our next reader. There are some seats up front as well if you want to come forward. MS Red Cherries received an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop and a JD from Arizona State University College of Law. She is a citizen of the Northern Cheyenne Nation and lives in Brooklyn. Her debut collection, Mother, was released in July 2024 from Penguin Books, was recently longlisted for the National Book Award, and she, this July, was a visiting writer at IAIA, and we have brought her into the family, and we'll never let her go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I feel very honored. I'm going to read very briefly. I had a kind of an emotional day today. I woke up this morning and I saw some videos from some relatives from the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation who welcomed home 3 relatives who, I'll say victims, were victims of the Carlisle Indian boarding school, and welcomed them home. I have their names here, and I want to read in their memory. Almeda Heavyhair, she was 16 years old. She came into the Carlisle Indian School in 1890, and she died in 1894. Bishop Shield, he came in 1890, and he passed away in 1890. He was 17 years old. And John Bull, he came in 1890, and he died in 1891. I'm going to read one section. This is at the end, it's called Exodus. Peace and love be with you over this great land that rests between the 2 oceans, in all 4 corners and all 4 directions therein. It is with the light of the power within that I speak on behalf of the Creator, from above, who sees and will be seen by those who free themselves from the victors that have plagued the earth below. It is I who have been sent from the heavens above, who cast beyond the mountains that hold the blood of our people and the light between the midday suns. I stand here before you to tell you of the great mountain that will be shaken by those who live on the 7 lands. When I turn back and see the white skull of a buffalo that looks like me, I know that the tilt of its shadow will be cast on the land from the west that bears the most fruit. The white skull has 4 maple branches in its 2 eyes and a black cup in its mouth. The jawbone has been crushed by the weight of the black cup. The feet of the great beast have been taken into pairs and stretched into the ground below, the hooves plated in gold and the head covered in flax. Everyone who touched its broken jaw waited in line on the shores of the 7 lands as they watched the great beast fall into the great mountain in the west. I fall at the feet of the buffalo and close my eyes. His face is shining like the sun. Now, under the North Star, I put my hands together and reach for the black cup and the remains of the buffalo's jaw, but I find Maheo's work incomplete. I fall down. I take my name to the hills, and my eyes meet with the one who is in the sickbed. His name is Lightning and Thunder, and I feel the beads of rain begin to hit my face before my voice cries out to the heavens above. I open my eyes and see a creature with only 1 eye and 1 wing emerging from the waves to take its place upright over the eastern sea facing west. I see the black cup in the creature's mouth. I hear an eagle. I fall down again. I see the creature open the ocean and crawl back in through a door facing the east. I see honey drip from the creature's mouth, and I smell the rain. The abyss will soon make war, and the black cup will be filled with gold. I hear the cries of those of the 7 lands below. Then I see another creature, translucent, giving testimony to those below with the sword in its hand. It tells of things which I do not say, and I count the words on its breath. I see 1,000 magpies with 1,000 black cups facing west and landing on the creature's back. Those in the 7 lands grab bowls to gather every raindrop before it falls on the land. 2 buffalo calves appear and drink from every bowl before the magpies eat the calves. Then those below tear the 1,000 black cups from the magpie's mouth and begin to drink the drops of rain they hold. The portion doubles, and all those on the lands below have a drink. The translucent creature collects the black cups and throws them into the sea for the creature within to devour. Those who drink on the land that bear the most fruit have their black cups refilled. The translucent creature pours his cup into the living waters of the earth below and into the rivers that empty into the sea. A single pearl forms in each of the lakes in the 7 lands below and rests in the deepest part of the water, casting enough light to reign forever and ever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michaela. Finally, we're going to have a reading from Deborah Taffa. Deborah Taffa's memoir, Whiskey Tender, has been named to 2024 best lists at Esquire, Oprah Daily, Elle, and The Washington Post. With fellowships and grants from the National Endowment for the Arts, PEN America, McDowell, and the NY State Summer Writers Institute, Deborah received her MFA in Creative Nonfiction Writing in Iowa City. A citizen of the Quatsan Yuma Nation and Laguna Pueblo, she is the director of the MFA Creative Writing Program at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
That was beautiful, Michaela. The last time I went home to the reservation was for my mother's funeral. My father was driving, and as we crossed the southern Arizona desert following the transport van that carried her body, I fell into a sandstorm dream. Dust blew, obscuring the highway, and small pebbles pecked the car like hail. I was driving alone in my dream and wanted to keep up with my mother, but the wind blew the sand so thick it darkened the earth, and I had to slow down because the steering wheel pulled through my hands. Though I knew the car might crash into the Badlands, I did not feel afraid. Instead, the sand flying into the headlights mesmerized me, making me forget who I was, where I was, why I started on this journey. There was no transport van with my mother's body before me, just the wind and darkness and a sense of wonder, the same feeling I had in my earliest years when the earth and the elements and the tiniest creatures were miracles. The storm stopped, and I descended from the car. The sun hung high and blazing, and I looked down the highway to spot a lake shimmering on the empty road. Awake, I would have known the water was a mirage. But in my dream, I was thirsty and walked toward it, still believing with the faith of a child. I grew up in a homeland favored by the Fata Morgana. Long before I understood illusions, I would see Spanish galleons floating over the horizon. For years, many of my ideas about the world were tricks of the environment. "We're here," my father said, waking me. We got out of the car and went to my mother in the transport van. Her eyes had reopened in transit, and she stared at me as if acknowledging that I'd spent a lifetime doubting what I saw. I felt her chastising me with her gaze, as if she were saying I could no longer stay small and invisible, as Indian kids are. I was a 50-year-old woman now, and it was time to grow into more than a ghost child in love with and afraid of mirages. 2. My inheritance stretches back to the so-called Anasazi. Over 1,000 years in the cacti, sage, and sandstone lands, in the desert canyons, adobe homes, and turquoise stone southwest. America runs like a river through my veins. Yet throughout my childhood, Native representation gathered dust in museums. On television, in books, I saw costumes and mascots, never a portrayal of a mixed tribe Native girl listening to music on her Walkman. Without a contemporary likeness of myself in the media, there was no confirmation that anything I experienced in my childhood was real. My father was born in 1941, and he taught me never to confuse pity with comprehension. His Quetzal Yuma grandfather was born in a time when California's Indian population had plummeted 90% because of foreign diseases, Catholic slave labor, and the government's hiring of private militia to bring in Indian scalps. California's first governor, Peter Hardeman Burnett, openly promoted genocide, calling for a war of extermination in his 1851 Second State Address. With the help of the U.S. Army, the California legislature distributed weapons to vigilantes who raided Native homes and killed 100,000 of my ancestors in the first 2 years of the gold rush alone. The legislature paid $1.1 million to these murderers, and when it was done, the U.S. Congress agreed to reimburse the state. When I was younger, I avoided writing about these atrocities. I told myself it sounded conceited. To have survived that much violence, my ancestors must have been powerful. It was like I was claiming to have super genes. Today, I know my hesitation was shame, the silence that follows an apocalypse, to talk about what we suffered, to concede that we were victims, was not something we did in my family. And yet to write about the culture that was taken via the government's assimilation policies, I must acknowledge the pain and remember the beauty in the middle-class life my parents jerry-rigged for me and my siblings in the high desert arroyos and sun-scorched histories of the American Southwest. 3. When my parents left their wedding reception, Mom was sober. Dad, of course, drove. He sped toward 4th Avenue, the main thoroughfare in Yuma, cutting into the opposite lane on corners, fishtailing with a groom's finesse. Mom grew scared. She hiked up her wedding dress, reached her long leg over his thigh, and stomped the brake with her high-heel shoe. The tires locked up. The car swung wide to the right before spinning them all the way around to the left, showing them the surprised expressions of people in other cars. It was like we were riding on the tilt-a-whirl at the Yuma County Fair, Mom said. The car slammed into the side of a busy downtown bar. The Plymouth's front end was mangled. Steam poured out of the radiator. It was a Sunday afternoon in April 1963, and the day was still light. Afternoon drinkers came flowing out of the bar's smoky interior like rice throwers out of a cathedral in a haze of incense and prayer. Being the eldest of 15 kids had made Mom conspicuous in this small town, and the bar was her father Juan's favorite, so some of the regulars and barflies realized she was a Herrera girl and wanted to know if she was okay. Sirens started up in the distance. A couple of biker chicks helped Mom out of the car, and she stood with them on the sidewalk in front, staring at the damaged headlight and hood. In her hurry to get out, she'd caught the train of her wedding dress in the door, and it had ripped. When she saw the torn fabric, she started crying. She told us, "I could see your dad through the window of the car with his forehead rested on the wheel, and I knew exactly what he was thinking." Dad was from the Yuma Reservation across the train tracks and river, and he was worried the town cops were going to book him again. But when the cops pulled up at the accident scene and looked at Mom, plopped on the curb in a puff of white satin, mascara running down her cheeks, they decided to be merciful and let Dad go. Mom said they felt sorry for her because she was a good, local Catholic girl who'd married a crazy Indian. When Dad walked in the front door and heard her telling us the story, he laughed and said she was wrong. He said the cops let him go, not because they pitied her, but because Mom was beautiful and pretty people got away with shit. He pulled off his black boots and lifted his holy socks onto the coffee table. He put his arm around her and said getting away scot-free on their wedding day was the first sign Mom's charm would work magic in his life, like a lucky rabbit's foot or a powerful tattoo. He reminded Mom how romantic he'd been at their wedding, how he'd refused to let her sisters decorate the car with do-it-yourself flowers because the phony tissue paper looked too common for a woman of her caliber. Instead, he and his brothers had performed a top-secret midnight operation sneaking into St. Thomas Indian Mission's garden on the reservation, where they cut a bunch of roses to string over the roof of the car. Mom groaned, "Don't brag about stealing from the church." But the two of them laughed, and Dad went in the kitchen to grab a snack. Mom's protestations never fooled me. She loved the memory of the stolen roses, as well as Dad's claim that her beauty swayed the cops. But what made her light up especially was the way he called her his lucky charm. This is how my parents twisted bad things around, seeing the appearances of events in funhouse mirrors, stretching memories tall and pretty when they were really goofy and squat. They knew a story could be told in various ways, and this is how they chose to shape theirs, and how they would teach me to shape mine as well, by molding their wedding day car accident into their first blessing as a couple. Four. This is the last one I'll read. It's nearly sunrise on the Navajo reservation, and I'm in a waking dream, in a teepee set up by a Cheyenne roadman, a medicine man named Black Bear. I sit in a circle of elders on a night with no moon and listen to a woman sing Wani Wachielo, the sound of the water drum and gourd rattle passing through my body as she prays. An eagle bone whistles as she weeps. On the dirt before us, the road of life, fashioned out of sand to cradle the fire, its flames dancing and leaping, alive. The roadman passes another dose of the green cacti we call grandfather peyote. It has been mashed into a relish, its sour taste hard to send down. Trees and cacti are social beings. The earth's plants use electric signals through a fungal network to warn one another of danger. They watch, keep track, and remember. They nourish the stumps of fallen companions for centuries by feeding them a sugar solution through their roots. They nourish and nurse the sick, including me. The fire in the center of the teepee, the water I go out to bring in at 3 a.m., the cedar thrown on the wood embers, the eagle wing used to fan the incense on my body and purify me as I stand before my community. This ceremony links me to this continent, the plants, animals, and ancestors who came before me. It enables me to release pain. Over 20 years of collected trauma, I see the earth breathing. I see the sunrise and the flames on the floor before me. I rest my face on the earth and feel her inhalation, her belly swelling in time with mine. This cactus, this hero's dose, this living relative, this health restorer, this omniscient spirit. The night following the ceremony, I dream. In my sleep, I ascend a mountain. The sky is black. There is a hogan and a barrel of water. A man with coal eyes, all pupils, no white in his gaze, approaches me. He is Grandfather Peyote, and when he hugs me, he squeezes me so hard I can't breathe. He forces an exhalation so complete that when I inhale, I become something new. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you will stay with us for a little more and sit with these words and look around at the books here. Michaela and Deborah's books are for sale and they'll be signing. Bex will come and give us some information on that. Please do take a look at the Institute of American Indian Arts if you have interest in or know someone who might be interested in the MFA program, with Studio Arts program, screenwriting program, all of it. It's a very beautiful, very, very special place. There's a blog online called Chapter House. It's our literary journal, which you can take a look at as well. Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
As Elise said, thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you to Lily and the Brooklyn Book Festival for helping us set this up. Thank you all so much for reading. It was an honor to have you all here. As Lily mentioned, we absolutely do have copies of Whiskey Tender and Mother. You're welcome to purchase it at the register where you checked in. We will have Deborah and Michaela. One of them will be up here and one of them will be near the register to sign. So buy your book, or if you already have the books, buy more. No book left behind, because you're supposed to be reading them. Thank you again so much for joining us. If you're still on the live stream, you can buy it in the link in the description. Make sure to grab your belongings. Thank you all for joining us and have a great night.